As we wrap up on the business desk this morning, still looking at expectations on the latest quarterly labour force survey to be released today, following a marginal drop in the unemployment rate to 34.5% in South Africa. However, young people remaining vulnerable. On that point, we are joined by the Chief Communications Officer at Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator, that is Zengeziwe Msimang. Thank you so much for your time, Zengeziwe. I think before we get to the bulletin that Harambee has published, looking further into the effects of unemployed youths in South Africa, let's talk about what you are expecting this time around from the figures that are coming out from Stats.
Ian, thanks for having me on the show. I think it's been a tough quarter. And so, it's difficult to know exactly what the stats are going to look like. But we've just come out of a time where we've had load shedding, up to stage 6 for several weeks. We've had, as you know, the war in Ukraine, which has sent petrol prices, skyrocketing. There've been a number of challenges in the past quarter that have really not been the best for our economy. And so I'm not very hopeful that we're going to see another uptick. But we really do have to just wait and see. There have been a number of programs that have been put in place, but I don't know that it's enough to balance out some of the real challenges that we've seen with our economy in the last quarter.
And let's talk a little bit more about those challenges that are essentially, endemic in the South African economic landscape, particularly for the youth. And I want to find out if there's any optimism or confidence in the current state to change the narrative here.
Yes, actually at Harambee there is a lot of optimism. I think that we can't deny the size and the scale of this challenge, and it could be overwhelming, but I think that there have been a lot of programs that have been put in place that have really started to make a dent in the challenge. And I think that's what we saw from that last uptick in the previous quarter. So I think when you look at the work that's being done at Harambee, we're currently working very closely through the SA Youth, which is part of the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. And what we're basically doing is seeing how can we match young people with working opportunities and learning opportunities, but most importantly, keep them engaged. We're currently sitting in a situation where there are 3.8 million young people in South Africa who are what we call NEETs, not in education, in employment, or in training. And I think that's really the place where, as a country and as Harambee with our partners, we're really trying to focus, because we have to keep young people engaged. We have to keep young people hopeful, and we have to keep them within a system where they are actively looking for employment. And I think that if you look at the work that's been done, the Department of Basic Education program, for example, I think put a lot of hope into the system in that it employed 287,000 young people, in a very short space of time. But essentially it's about solving at scale. It's about everybody coming together and and providing options and opportunities that are going to be visible to young people and that they're going to be able to actively engage with.
Very valid points, and that's the reason why essentially that I was intrigued by Harambee's quarterly Breaking Barriers report, because one of the insights that you note there is the public employment programs. How much of that is needed to take this needle even further? Because you do highlight and note that there has been some dent that's been made, but essentially not good enough at this point in the lives of South Africans and youth, young South Africans, and their lived experiences with unemployment.
Definitely. And I think that public employment programs that have been taking place through the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative have been really, really great in that they have provided that scaled approach, and there's a debate that has been going on about, does government create jobs? Does the private sector create jobs? Is it civil society? Essentially, when you're looking at millions of unemployed young people, then the answer is everybody. It needs to be everybody. And the public employment programs have been really critical in getting young people into opportunities. And I think what we've learned at Harambee is that there's so much to be said for keeping young people engaged and making sure, you've got people, Tumi, who haven't worked for 7 years, an 18-year-old that comes out of school and has never worked. And these public employment programs are doing so much just to ensure that they get into the system and they experience work. And we found that once young people have gotten that first working opportunity, it pathways them and increases their chances of getting another opportunity. So it really is about making sure that we're able to pull all those public employment programs together. We're able to pull the opportunities that exist in the private sector because they are there. I mean, Harambee's research has shown that in the digital sector, there's potentially 500,000 jobs through to the next few years that could be mined. But it's about having one, strategic place where everybody can come together and really make those opportunities available. And I think there's also a lot to be said for learning opportunities as well. A lot of young people come out and into the labor market or trying to enter the labor market, and there's a skills mismatch between what they're able to do and what the economy requires or what the opportunities require. So there really is a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that young people are able to increase their skills and able to get training opportunities so that they're constantly being kept engaged, so that when those big initiatives and big projects such as the public employment projects, the Department of Basic Education project, and many government initiatives that have happened. I know the NYDA have done the National Youth Service, where they employed 20,000 people in the last quarter. So it really is about looking at how do we address this at scale using all of the job opportunities that are currently available.
Lastly, part of that work that needs to go into ensuring that there's some sort of stabilization and job creation for the youth is the Inside 2, where it talks about the precarious nature of the hustle economy. Interesting choice of words there, because we really have not put it in a bracket as to what it is that forms part of a hustle economy. But the current dynamics have forced young people to fend for themselves and try to make a living. However, there needs to be a solid grounding where there's regulation and there is some sort of policy that speaks to how do we stabilize that part to ensure that it generates the enough revenue to capitalize on the job creation that's needed.
Definitely, Jumi, and I think we've seen in the past quarter that when you look at micro enterprise, which is the hustle economy as we call it, it basically speaks to the fact that there are young people who, especially during the COVID pandemic, who have shown this amazing resilience and have been able to find ways to support themselves and ways to survive, frankly. And you find a lot of women, young women, for example, who are hustling by having jobs as nail technicians or hairdressers. You find a lot of young men who are in the taxi industry, going as taxi drivers, people selling on the side of the road. I think it's important that we don't discount this kind of entrepreneurship drive, and more importantly, we support it, because fundamentally people are living from hand to mouth, and we need to make sure that we're able to support people who are hustling or who are really entering into micro enterprises that are enabling them to survive. And it's about how do we support them and how do we ensure that we have the policies in place to make that 300 Rand that a young woman might have earned hustling into 3,000 Rand? How do we make sure that they have access to marketing their products? How do we make sure, there's a great project we're working on with Really, which is basically a platform that lets young people have businesses, and with those businesses, when they apply on this platform, they can buy at wholesale cost, and they actually get a 5% discount in which they get the money back into their accounts. It's about supporting young people to enter into micro enterprises that are sustainable, so that while we're trying to get those formal sector jobs and while we're trying to stimulate the economy, we're also enabling young people to become entrepreneurs and really survive without that formal economy structure.
Absolutely. Great insights. Thank you so much for your time. That is Zengeziwe Msimang talking to us there as we build up to the expectations around the expected quarterly labor force survey from Statistics South Africa that is going to paint a picture of the South African landscape when it comes to the labor environment.